found it extremely annoying that one of the bathrooms on my dorm was permanently closed, especially since the cause was an urban legend. An urban legend, I tell you. According to the story, years and years ago, some bloke got himself massively drunk at a bar in downtown Helena and had passed out in the bathroom on the fourth floor. Apparently, he hit his head on the sink as he fell, and his blood had spattered the sink as he slid senseless to the floor and silently hemorrhaged to death. His death was considered a sad accident by faculty, staff, and townspeople. But that was no reason to shut up the bathroom for decades. I completely discounted the story of the bleeding sink. That was just an urban legend the students circulated to explain the locked door. I'm sick of sharing a bathroom with you. I'm going to break into the fourth floor bathroom. My roommate's eyes widened. Don't you know that the bathroom is haunted? He exclaimed. The bloodstains on the sink are as fresh today as they were when the accident happened back in 1960s. And sometimes you can hear the boy moaning as his life ebbs away on the bathroom floor. Romantic twaddle, I snapped. My granny lives in a haunted castle in Scotland, with ghost stories that would make your hair stand on the end. She would laugh at me if she found out I ignored a perfectly good bathroom because of a few bloodstains. Besides, the maintenance staff told me the bathroom was shut up pending renovations. No big deal. You'll be sorry, my roommate said darkly. I ignored him. He was just sore because I had lumped him in with the disgusting lot of fellows who mugged up the bathroom on my floor. You'd think someone would teach them to pick up their dirty clothes and clean the sink once in a while. When the dorm quieted down for the night, which was not until late, I hurried to the fourth floor with a bit of wire I had purchased at a local hardware store. My little brother and I had become expert lockpickers over the years, since our mother had a bad habit of locking her keys into the house or the car at least once a week. With all that experience, the lock on the bathroom door gave me no problems. The bathroom was rather old-fashioned in appearance and had a disused air. There was dust in the corners and a spider web drooped from the ceiling. But I heard no unearthly groaning, no mysterious footsteps. I carefully inspected the sink, the walls, and the floor. Other than a smallish orange discoloration on the sink, there was no blood anywhere. Ha! So much for urban legends. There was probably something in the water that caused discoloration over time. I turned the tap experimentally, sure that the maintenance staff had shut off the water long ago. To my surprise, water gushed forth instantly. I smiled. Well, it looked I had a bathroom to myself after all. I carefully locked the door behind me when I left. I got up late the next morning and had the downstairs bathroom all to myself. So it was not until late evening, when everyone was back in the dorm, crowding in and out of the bathrooms, that I slipped away to use up the locker facilities. It was still early in the evening, and I made sure no one was around before I headed to the abandoned bathroom. With a few twists of wire, I opened the lock. As I stepped inside, the air temperature plummeted 20 degrees or more, and my nose was hit by the pungent, strong smell of fresh blood. A second later, I saw the blood-spattered sink. Bright red gore was everywhere, on the porcelain, on the walls, oozing down the side of the sink, and hovering before it, his feet a good 6 inches off the ground, was the luminous form of a college-aged boy, wearing old-fashioned clothes in the style of the 1960s. His forehead had a disfiguring dent smashed into it, and blood was dripping down his face. As I gaped at him, horrified and frozen in terror, he turned and looked at me. Then he held out a blood-stained hand. His eyes were desperate, pleading for help. and I heard a low moaning sound coming from between his blood-stained lips. The sound raised every hair on my body and made the skin prickle in sheer cold horror. I backpedaled fiercely, my legs scrambling to get away while my eyes and head remained fixed on the ghost on the bloody sink. A drop of red blood fell from his outstretched hand as I stared at him. Then the momentum of my legs carried me through the door, which slammed shut behind me. Hot pungent smell of fresh blood followed me through the halls and down the staircases until I was outside into the chilly air of autumn, breathing deeply. My knees shook so bad that I fell onto the nearest patch of grass, stomach heaving. Oh Lord, the ghost was real. No wonder they kept that place locked up. I lay on the grass for a long time, ignoring the chill in the air. This was a natural chill which comforted, not the unnatural chill that had frightened me upstairs. I breathed in and out, watching the stars above me, bright even through the campus lights. I took comfort from the huge clear expanse of the sky, but I still felt reluctant to go back inside the haunted building. I shuddered once from head to toe. Oh, how my granny would laugh if she knew her big brave grandson was too scared to go back inside a haunted dormitory. It was the thought of Granny that got me onto my feet and upstairs to my room. But I did not care what Granny or anyone else thought of me. I was never going back to the fourth floor bathroom. Once was enough. During my sophomore year, I lived in a haunted dorm. I will admit, I have always loved a good ghost story. So you could say I was primed to have a good ghost sighting, or at least hopeful for one. And at Kenyon College in Ohio, where I went to school, ghosts are a big part of campus lore. Every October, the security guards host a bonfire and recount straight-faced tales of disappearing footprints, disembodied wails, and an elevator that operated on its own. One professor leads a haunted campus tour, and Kenyon alumni from different generations share versions of their stories at reunions and gatherings. It's part of our shared language and a useful conversation starter. The stories themselves are regularly embellished, and some have taken on mythic proportions, but the original tales come from a handful of tragic accidents over the last century. One such calamity took place around 4 a.m. on February 27, 1949, when a towering stone dormitory called Old Kenyon burned to the ground in a devastating fire that killed 9 students. 2 of those students died as a result of skull fractures they suffered after jumping from the windows. The fire was national news. It made the front page of many newspapers, along with a photo of a group of college men huddled before the building, its windows illuminated by the uncontrollable blaze. The dorm, a beautiful 1829 Gothic revival building with spires, had been the centerpiece of campus, so the school vowed to rebuild quickly, and by the next year, Old Kenyon was ready for new inhabitants. The exterior was reset with the structure's original stones, but the inside was reconstructed with concrete and steel to be safer and more modern in design. According to legends, the ghosts of the dead students preferred to walk along the old floor plan. Allegedly, they silently traversed the hallways, visible only from the waist up. That or their feet can be seen gliding over the student's head. When I lived in Old Canyon, I never saw any meandering spirits, but sometimes, in the middle of the night, when not a canyonite was stirring, I would awake to an old pattern. The room would get very cold, and I would feel the presence of a slow-moving force gliding towards me past my dresser. My makeup cases, vitamin bottles, and other dresser-top trinkets would clatter to the floor, but they would not fall all at once. Instead, the items would drop to the carpet, one by one, as if someone were pushing a hand slowly through them. In these moments, I would lay very still, paralyzed by an oddly cheerful terror. My ghost was back. There were a few other poltergeist encounters during the year. Once my roommate and I fled screaming after a disembodied voice woke both of us at the same time. A college boyfriend once dreamed he heard the door slam before he was locked in place by cold hands pressing him into the bed. I have held these stories up as a proof of genuine haunting. Not surprisingly, there are logical explanations for all of my supposed supernatural encounters. But why tell them? It would only ruin the story. This happened to me during my first year of university, in October. I was living in the dorms. Our dorm has a unique feature. You need a key card to gain access to a specific floor. So even though someone on the 3rd floor and the 4th floor live in the same building, they can't access each other's floors. Before that, I had injured myself playing sports, so I was under orders to rest, which meant no Halloween parties for me. Pretty sad for a horror fiend like myself. But to try and make the time a happy one, I busied myself helping to make costumes for people and doing their makeup. Once I was finally finished, I packed up my makeup and decided to watch some movies. In my room, a guy popped up and introduced himself. We chatted a bit and exchanged email addresses, and I walked back into my room and said goodnight. The first warning sign was that he walked into my room behind me, despite me saying I was going to walk into my room. I felt really awkward and tried to say, in a roundabout way, that he needed to leave. But he was not getting the hint. I finally had to say, "You need to leave my room now." I chalked this up to him, maybe being drunk or something. But I did wonder how he got onto my floor if he was not with anyone partying. Before I went to bed that night, I checked my email, and there were 5 from the creep. The first being, "Hey, I'm so glad that we're friends," and the rest asking why I was not online. A few days later, I got a knock on my door when I was studying, and it was him. I explained that I was studying and needed privacy. He tried to walk in my room again, but I braced my arm on the frame and said firmly that I needed to study. The next day, he was at my door again, and the next. I began pretending that I was not at home. Another day, there was a knock at the door, and when I checked the peephole, there was no one. And so I assumed it to be a postman. I opened the door, and once again, the creepy guy stood before me. He has begun hiding from the peephole, so I would be more likely to answer the door. I told my roommate never to open the door if he was there, and I told the people living on my floor that this guy was beginning to creep me out. So if he wanted to get on the floor, whatever sob story he gave them, don't let him on. A few days later after that, I was on the bus coming home and I got a text from someone who lived on my floor telling me not to come home because the creep was on my floor and was sitting in front of my door, just waiting. I went to a friend's house that night and spent the night there. When I got home, I was told that he waited for me for 4 hours before leaving. At this point, I was getting freaked out. A few days later after that, he began waiting outside the building, and if I left, he would follow me wherever I went. I was too spineless to tell him to go away, and I tried to be more passive about it. I never spoke and never gave any indication that I was paying attention, but he followed me to class, cafeteria, and always tried to follow me home and get access to the floor. I went to the resident advisor. Resident advisor is an older student that watches over the floor, and told her what happened. She spoke to the RA for his floor and told that the creep had been telling his own RA that we were best friends and that we were dating. My RA tried to explain that I was uncomfortable, but the other RA believed the creep. Thankfully, one thing did deter him. He would never approach me if I was with a group of people, so my floor mates banded together. If I went to dinner, I went with my floor, and if I wanted a drink or seconds, someone had to come with me. Walking to class and even waiting for a bus was done in a group. He got onto my floor once when someone else was coming home, and he forced his foot in the door to let himself in. I was hiding in another room, and when he left my door to go and sit in the TV lounge to wait for me, I went downstairs and ran around the other side of the building and got into my room before he noticed. Then the phone calls began. I never gave him my number, but he somehow obtained my mobile number and room phone number. And at first it would be around 1 to 2 phone calls a day until I told him that I wanted him to leave me alone. Then the phone calls began coming in every hour, with him begging and pleading for me to talk to him. Without caller ID, I needed to answer the phone because of school and part-time job. At this point, it was November and I was a wreck. I was tired of having to plan out doing simple things like going for food or walking to a bus stop. Stress was not helping me recover from my injury, and I was losing weight. I looked sickly. I went back to the RA and begged her to help me. She went to the head of the dorms and explained everything that had happened. I explained how far this had gone, and my roommate then told them that he had followed her a few times, demanding that she would tell him where I was. I felt awful. She never told me this because she was afraid of upsetting me further. After that, I heard that he was told to leave me alone, and in any further contact would result in him being kicked out of the dorms. There was one email where he went insane on me, telling me how awful I was. How could I do this to him? We were so happy together. Surely I was cheating on him with other men. After that, nothing. At first, when I would see him around the campus, I would run to the women's toilet to hide. I would see him around campus or on campus, and he would always just stare at me. Never tried to approach me, never tried to get my attention, just staring. I used to walk by and try to pretend I did not notice him staring, and I would try and act like my heart wasn't pounding. Till this day, this incident gives me chills, and I find myself waking up in the night, staring out of the window, looking for affirmations that he is still not out there, watching my every move.